Eile toldot Noach. Noach ish tzadik. Tamim haya bedorotav. Et Elohim italech Noach. What an introduction to a fascinating human being who really is, for all intents and purposes, the father of humanity as we know it. The world is entirely destroyed. Noach survives the flood, comes out of the teva, and has to build a new world. When the Torah tries to introduce us to Noach, it uses the strange formula that I just read, which raises some serious questions. Yes, indeed, Noach is a righteous man. Clearly, the Torah attests to this. He is an ish tzaddik. It adds on the words, Tamim haya bedorotav. Wholesome he was. What does in his generations mean? What is this supposed to tell us? And to round off, the Torah tells us, Et ha'Elohim italech Noach. Noach walked with God. Indeed, a righteous man. So the Gemara has an interesting debate, rather well famous. What kind of tzaddik was Noach truly? If I measured up Noach against tzaddikim in other generations, how would he muster up? Well, two classic opinions. One says, yes, indeed, Noach was a righteous man. He was such a righteous man that he would have been a righteous man in any generation. He was a man worthy of being saved when the entire world was being destroyed. Others say no. Indeed, Noach, by contrast to his generation, was a righteous man. After all, he did live in a generation of pure, unadulterated evil. But to say that he was a righteous man compared to other righteous people? No. In fact, Noach had his limitations. Strange discussion for our sages to have. After all, since when do we take one righteous man and try to compare him or contrast him to another? Perhaps to learn some messages from it, but to try to evaluate? Is it our job to evaluate the level of righteousness of people? Indeed, the sentence for itself raises an interesting question. In its generations, alludes that perhaps it is only in his generations that he was righteous. But that's a nuance that allows us to open this discussion, not the purpose of the discussion. The essence of the discussion, I believe, is to try to build a startling contrast to the next great sage that is going to emerge on the history of the world. Next week, we're going to meet the awesome personality of Abraham, our forefather. Abraham and Noach were quite different. Yes, about Abraham also. It is testified by God himself of what a righteous man he is, what great contributions he had to our society, to all of humanity. But the contrast is amazing. 120 years Noach was busy building an ark. For 120 years people came to him and Noah said, Noah, what are you doing? We could hear the echoes of Bill Cosby in the background. And Noah told people, God is going to destroy this world. I am being prepared. So indeed he did tell society about it. But what kind of an effort did Noach do in order to try to influence society? What kind of an effort did Noach do to try to change the way society is behaving? And when God told him that the world is going to be destroyed, what did Noach do? Noach accepted the rule of God. Absolute, no questions, no challenges. What did Abraham do when he was told that not the world was being destroyed, but a mere 5 towns? Towns that were well known for their wicked ways. Towns that were the banes of the existence of Abraham, that were in contrary to everything that he was trying to do. Did Abraham take it just like that? Oh, absolutely not. Abraham immediately approached Kadosh Baruch Hu. He approaches God with an argument. Perhaps there are righteous people in this town. Perhaps we should save this town on behalf of these righteous people. He negotiates, he pleads, he tries. Because Abraham always was focused on humanity that is around him. The Gemara has a very, very strange formula. They use a term that is difficult to understand. Tzaddik v'ra labriot. Seems like an oxymoron. How could one be a tzaddik, a righteous man, and be bad for society? Indeed, being bad for society doesn't mean that you're being proactive in causing trouble for people. A righteous man that lives his entire life only focused on his personal relationship with God, without paying attention to what is happening around him, without taking himself out of the four walls of the Beit Midrash, to reach out to people around him, to educate, to elevate them, to help them. The Gemara defines him as Ra Labriot. He is one that is bad for society, because he sets a very poor example for civil responsibility. Noach indeed deserved to be saved. Indeed, he was a righteous man, but his righteousness was limited to his relationship with God. He walked before God. He gave up on society around him. He realized that their wicked ways will not be changed, and he made no effort to try to save them and no effort to try to change them. Indeed, this is the first righteous person that we meet and that we explore with a very powerful lesson. Indeed, he was a righteous man. He walked before God. But when society was gone, and he was left all by himself with his own family after the flood, and he had to build humanity all over again, we find an Ish Adamah, a man of earth, a lowly man that focuses on planting a vineyard for himself so he could produce wine, so he could drink and get drunk. Ultimately, no matter how righteous one may be in his relationship with God, if his focus is not on society, if his focus is not on helping everyone else, he is going to have a negative effect on society, and eventually a negative effect on himself as well. Noach ish tzaddik, et ha-Elohim italech Noach. Indeed, Noach walked by side of God. But when it comes to Abraham, the charge is very clear. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells him, Hitalech lefanai veheyeh tamim. You want to be innocent? You want to be wholesome? Walk before me. It is your responsibility to lead the charge. Go out. Impact society around you. And then you will find true righteousness. Shabbat Shalom.